Girl, you know, brother be sweaty, that's all I'm trying to say. I ain't trying to be beautiful, I'm just trying to be glistening, you know what I mean? Thank you, Kim Chi. This is the black. Hey, welcome back to Mr. Larrie's Craft Show. I am your host, Mr. Larrie. Today we're talking about one of my personal favorite crafts, which is sewing. The things that you can do with sewing are so expansive. There will probably be several episodes that involve sewing of some sort. We'll take things slowly and I'll introduce you to new ideas in sewing along the way over the next 20 years as the show continues. Today, we're talking about the basics, about my machine, this Brother Strong and Tough machine that I just got, which might sound a little bit intimidating, especially if you don't sew already. If you are a sewer or seamstress, sewer, if you are a person who sews, you might find a tip or two in this video. But today we're starting with a basic reversible shoulder bag that you can make with just a few scraps of fabric and a little bit of time and patience. If you don't have a machine already, I really recommend finding one if you really want to try and pick up that skill. And it's a life skill that I think everyone should have. Oh, women, children, babies, grandma, grandpa, the puppy, everybody can sew if they really put their mind to it. Although puppies don't have thumbs, so maybe that would not be a good idea for them. But everybody else, this little double-sided bag will give you a way to not only express yourself, but it's also incredibly useful. Before we get into that, there are 3 things that I want to share with you about our sewing project that will help you get started. Starting with thing number 1. Sewing is massive. Sewing encompasses a huge number of different skills and industries, and there are a lot of different avenues for sewing expertise that we could draw from. Crafting and art and fashion, obviously. Most of what I've learned about sewing over the years has come through many different kinds of tutorials and lessons and trial and error and asking friends for help and getting unsolicited advice and all sorts of things. Sewing is just a thing that can really allow you to express yourself, to mend things and repair things, build things from thin air, if you like, just like all of our crafts can. I started sewing in high school when I recognized that the clothes I had were not, I got made fun of. Let's just say that. I was, I was poor and I didn't have things that people were supposed to have, I guess, when you're a high school student. And so sewing for me was a way to try and bridge that gap. Terribly. Oh, it was such a failure. I didn't know what I was doing. I learned a few things and then I put it to the side. And that brings us to thing number 2. I didn't start sewing again until college, but then I let a gap form between then and the next time that I really made an earnest attempt in sewing, which was about 10 years ago. Sparrow House was my online Etsy store for about 10 years. And when I wasn't selling online, I'd sell through art fairs locally. I had a fair amount of success with the hand-sewn goods that I sold through that shop. A lot of times I was selling things in bulk. Just little accessories that could really help you keep your life organized. Running my business fueled a passion for sewing that I think exceeded what I was able to do with selling little zipper pouches and stuff to people. And so that kind of got me into thinking larger scale, doing things like quilts and outerwear and clothing in general. And so that's kind of where I am now. I'm still exploring all of these new areas and making things that have longer lives and have bigger impact for the person I'm making it for. And of course, continuing on learning how to get better and do more interesting things with cosplay and with costuming in general. And that brings us to thing number 3. Getting started with my machine really involved embracing, learning its components and how it works. What? I'll give you just a short tour of my machine. You'll probably find comparable parts on yours. and then we'll get started on our project for today. Essential components: you have a needle and thread. Sewing needles are easy to find. They come in a variety of sizes and purposes, so you'll find the needle that works best for you. Of course, there is a universal needle that can do pretty much everything. You'll also need an assortment of thread. Again, there are a massive number of different kinds of threads out there, so which thread you use is really going to be specific to what you're trying to do with it. I recommend a nice cotton or polycotton thread. You also have the foot, which guides the fabric through the sewing machine. You can switch these out, again, depending on what you're trying to do. They have special feet for things like zippers, for rolling a hem, and all sorts of things. You have your sewing pedal, which is just like a car pedal. You press it down to go, you release to stop. If you can drive a car, you can drive a sewing machine. And last but not least, you have your bobbin. I have most consistently heard people having difficulties with the bobbin of their sewing machine. I call my bobbin Bobby. She's my best friend. She's there when I need her. And when she needs a little help, I help her out. That's all it is. It's real simple. It's just a little relationship. My personal machine has a really nice drop-in bobbin that makes it easy to switch it out and to see the status of my bobbin thread. You have to have top thread, bobbin thread, needle, presser foot, pedal. I think that's all the things. And then you sew. Easy, right? Let's try it out. Print out the pieces, tape them all together, and then join me at the cutting table. The pattern and written instructions for this bag are available at the link below. Each side of this double-sided bag consists of 4 panels. My exterior is going to be all 4 of the same panels of fabric, but the interior is going to be 4 different pieces. I'll add a seam allowance of a 1/4 inch to each side of the interior panels, excluding the top and bottom of the bag, and then I'll cut all of those at the same time. So now I have my 4 pieces for the interior side and the 2 pieces for the exterior. I'll start by putting the interior pieces together. So this just means taking 2 of each of the panels and stitching their longest sides together, and then joining all 4 panels together to form the first part, or the inside of the bag. I typically stitch all the way down, starting with a back stitch and ending with a back stitch in order to stabilize the seam. I'll press them open with an iron, and then I'll stitch the seam down for additional support and a little added structure. I'm just using my longest stitch, and it's just a straight seam all the way down for both of these pieces of the inside of the bag. I close up the interior of the bag by stitching all 4 of the panels together, and then repeating the steps from earlier. I'll press the seams flat off camera and then stitch them down for a nice finish. Next, I'll create a flat bottom for the bag by closing it and then simply stitching straight across. I'll do this for both the inside and the outside. The next part is creating a gusset for each of the bag bottoms. This will give it that nice flat look, and it's actually a lot easier to achieve than it might look. You simply open the bottom of the corner into a triangle, and then flattening that, stitch it closed, and then snip that triangle off. I'll do this for all 4 corners of both the interior and the exterior of the bag. And then I leave about a 1/4 inch of space at the edge of the stitch. I place the inside of the bag into the outside of the bag with their faces toward each other, and then I'll pin them at where their central points are. From here, I'll stitch the entirety of the outer seams down. So this will be just 2 stitches in the shape of a giant U to bring the 2 pieces together. You should leave the tail ends of your bag's handle open. This is a mistake that I made and then had to basically take the whole bag apart to fix. And it was not pretty, and I did cry a little bit, but we got through it somehow miraculously. From there, we have to turn the whole bag inside out. This can be a little bit tough because the whole bag has to fit through the smallest part of the strap, which is probably why it's designed to be a little bit wider than what I would typically like. But using the assistance of a knitting needle and a little bit of tenacity, we got the bag inside out, and it's looking really good already. Now we just have to join the tail ends of the strap together, but first I'll press all of the edges down flat, and then I'll iron the inside of the bag a little bit too, just to make sure that the fabric isn't shifting as I complete all of the stitches that are needed. I grab the 2 pieces of the inside of the bag and stitch that straight across together to complete that loop, and then I'll repeat the same thing on the opposite side, using the extra fabric to fold down and mask any seams that I don't want seen. And I used a couple of pins to hold that in place to assist as I try to make that as clean as possible. I'll stitch across that seam and then the seam on the back as well, and then I'll stitch all around the handle loops of the bag to give it a nice clean finish. And from there, the bag is complete. Y'all, I was not sure this was gonna work out, but it did! This is a really cool bag, I think. It's certainly a unique bag. It complements my apron so well. Isn't that mysterious? I'd love to see if you attempt this project on your own and what fabrics you use and what things you do to make it your own. Perhaps in the future we'll talk about zippers, which are way easier than you think they are. A journey today has been, but we made it through, and we have a really cool, unique bag to show for it. And I appreciate you being here with me along the way, and I can't wait to see you again next week. Bye.
Mister Larrie, a clown who wants to keep you and your family scraping the bottom of the discount bins for fabric scraps and hot glue? A vote for Mister Larrie is a vote for excessive craft supply, laughing at your own jokes, high blood sugar, history lessons you didn't ask for, smiling, wanting a pet but knowing you aren't prepared for the additional responsibility. A vote for Mister Larrie is a swing in the wrong direction. Paid for by Americans Against Everything Good and Fun and Pure.